Poem What is This Game by Javed Akhtar. This is the explanation of the poem. This is a poem regarding the game of chess, written by the famous writer Javed Akhtar. And in this poem, the writer, that is the poet, is thinking during his move. And the thoughts that come during the move, when he has to move and his turn has to come, are penned in this poem. So let us read through it and understand what he is trying to say. My opponent has made a move and now awaits mine. But for a long time I stare at the black and white pieces that sit on the white and black squares, and I wonder, what are these pieces? Now this is the poem about the game of chess. So there are two players in this poem, and the poet here acts one of the players, and he says that his opponent, the person playing against him, has already played his turn, moved his move, and is waiting for the poet, that is the speaker of the poem or the poet, to make his move. And here the speaker, the poet, is thinking about what are these small pieces of black and white color that are on the black and white squares of the chessboard. So he's thinking about what is this game, what are these pieces, and what is this game all about. He goes on to say, if I were to assume that these pieces are no more than wooden toys, then what is the point in victory or defeat? Neither is this necessary, nor is that important. If there is no pleasure in a win, nor sorrow in a loss, then what is this game? He says that if I consider these pieces on the chessboard as just mere toys made of wood, the chessboard is usually made of wood, and those pieces on it are also made of wood. So he says that if he just considers them to be mere toys, then there is no thrill, no excitement of winning or losing the game. It's just no point, because it's just toys. So in that case, then what is this game? So he says that because if I consider them as toys, then there is no thrill of losing, no sorrow of losing the game, or no excitement or happiness to win a game. Then he says, I think if I must play, then I should convince myself that these pieces are indeed king and queen, that these are real foot soldiers, and arrayed before them is the enemy army. He says, on the other hand, if I think that the pieces that are king and queen are actually king and queen in the game, and the soldiers that are standing in front, arrayed in front, and that is they are standing in front of the king and queen, are actually confronting the enemy army, then what does he consider? Let's read on. Which plans and intends to destroy me. But if I were to make myself believe this, then I think this is no longer a mere game. This is a war that must be won. A war in which all is fair. It is as if somebody says to me, this is a war and a game too. This is a war, but one between players, a game, but one like war. I ask myself, this game, why does it have such a rule. He says that if that way I consider, in that case I have to defend myself, I have to protect myself, my soldiers that are on the board. And in that case, it is a war. So he says that he needs to protect himself because you consider it as a war and you need to win it. And yet it is a game. So it is a game that needs to be played as if you are protecting yourself in a war. It's still a game, but to be played as though it is a war or a battle between two parties or two opponent parties. He goes on to say that this game, why does it have such a rule that no matter what happens to any of the pieces, the one that is king must be protected from harm at all times. In this game, the chess game, the king needs to be protected constantly at any point, at every point of the game. No matter what happens, whether the other pieces are lost, but the king needs to be protected. This is one of the rules of the game. Another rule of the game that is mentioned here is that only queen has the freedom to move in any direction it wants. That is another second rule of the game mentioned here in this poem. That the king needs to be protected, but the queen can move any direction it wants. I wonder, this game, why does it have such a rule that once a pawn leaves home, it can never return? I wonder if this is the rule. Then what are rules? If this is the game, then what is this game? I have been wrestling with these questions for a long time. Meanwhile, my opponent has made a move and awaits mine. He says, that is the poet or the player of the game in this case at the moment, he says that in this game, this is another funny rule, that when a pawn, a piece, that is a piece, when it moves out of its home, it cannot return. What a funny rule. He says, what is this rule? If this is a game, then what is this rule? And if this is a game with rules, then what is the game? He says he is wrestling. He is trying to concentrate and deal with these different thoughts that he's got. In the meantime, the opponent is waiting for a long time. The other player is waiting for a long time after his move for the speaker to make his move of the game. So these are the various thoughts that the speaker has, that the poet has about the chess game. It's a game, needs to be played as if you are fighting a war. That is it all about.